imposter. Well, we didn't talk about being imposter in particular, but I think you're afraid of failing, right? Or not being good enough, especially when you're putting your first draft out there, right?
Yeah.
Unless you want to talk more about that imposter stuff.
Because it's an area that was not part of my normal identity, right? Because when, if I had to do something that was related to like, programming or IT or math or science or something, it's more my comfort zone. So I can say like, feel like I'm more of authority because that's sort of at least closer to my domain. But when you're doing something that's very different, like I'm switching to being a filmmaker, and it's something that is new to me and is not like an area that I've been in for a long time. Yeah, sometimes it feels like in some ways like I'm an imposter because I'm just going to see what it's like before, I can genuinely call myself a filmmaker. Like because like I don't know what it's like to be a filmmaker. I don't know what it means. So you're doing it for a while before you kind of feel like you're before the clothes fit. I can't think of a better analogy, but people will talk to me about my script, and like to them they see me as like a writer. But for me, in terms of like the length of my life, I've only been a writer relatively recently, because I've been around for like 39 years now, but I sort of only really think of myself as a writer in like maybe the past like 2 or 3 years, even though I've like written stuff here and there along the way. My identity was not about being a writer, but now it is more. So related to the sometimes feeling like an imposter is I guess I was never used to like praise or growing up. I always got the message like, Andrew, you have such great potential, like you should do great things. Like we expect so much of you. So I always felt like I was never quite meeting that. Like no matter how much I did, how much I was able to do, that the bar was always so much higher. I needed to keep going and I could just never reach, what I needed to achieve, So in that respect, like no matter how much people would see that I accomplished or did, like in my mind I hadn't really gotten anything because all that I perceived I should be at, so I think in doing filmmaking and stuff, yeah, there's part of it is that being a rookie, like being new to it, and experiencing success also feels like but more deeply for myself, I think just being able to accept people's, compliments, like is just in general something that I've had to learn how to do because I just have never been good at accepting compliments from people.
Part of what I'm hearing is that you had to somehow make a switch where you were enough, right? That you deserved good things, that you were good.
I wouldn't say that switch is completely, completed. I still feel like I'm in the process of it, but I've been able to accept it more because, at the different phases of filmmaking, like there are all these challenges. And so I guess, one of the bits of advice people give is like to celebrate your wins, no matter how small. And so as we've gone through this process, and there's so many difficulties and challenges that we have been able to, overcome, like it's made me feel better about it because like, by those measures, I have succeeded. I haven't finished the film yet, so I still feel like, we're not there, and I don't have that accomplishment. But, being able to like, in pre-production, find the locations, which was difficult in of itself, and, and then filming it like on these various locations, like especially down in Toronto Pinnacles, like there were all these hardships that we were able to get by. Like it was, and we were able to do it, and like we got all the footage we needed, and so I was like, wow, those were like huge steps that we got by, and so I feel much better about where I'm at.
Sometimes being an imposter is that everyone thinks you're really good, but you don't feel like you're really good.
Yeah, it's like the gap between what of as good, but it's different from what people perceive of you. Like I have a very high bar in my mind for things like that. I want it to be like, this great, and it maybe sometimes it's unrealistic or whatever. And so I guess it's similar to what I was saying before, where it's like, I've never quite reaching the potential that I have envisioned in my head, even though it may be high, but it's not like the kind of insane level that's like, in my head of what it should be. And then, other people, like, they have a more objective view, I guess, because they see like the output and they judge it based on that. If anything could exist in the universe, what should it be like? Which is vastly different than reality.
Well, how do you adjust that then? Because when you take it from your head into the real world, how do you make the adjustment so you're actually still excited about what's there, the actual thing that comes out versus what was in your head?
I mean, it makes me think about what Ira Glass said about taste. He says a lot of artists, like, they have great taste, but when they first try to make art, whether it's filmmaking or whatever, and it falls short of what their vision is, they get really discouraged because then they think they aren't able to do it. But that gap exists, and it may exist for a long time, but if you just keep doing it, you keep trying to reduce that gap. Maybe if you're lucky, you're able to birth something into the world that does match what your vision is. I mean, if you're able, that, to me, that's like the nirvana of an artist, right? Turns out exactly how you imagined it to be. And so I think if you can get over that initial, inertia, or that it always turn out exactly how you imagine. If you're able to push through that and just know that each time you do it and you get closer, because, even if it doesn't come out exactly how you want, it's still like better than not existing, and it's still closer, than not doing it at all. In the original shooting script for Ghost in the Gun, when Krug is practicing like shooting the gun, there's a part where like he reaches up without looking and shoots a vulture. And we ended up not being able to find like a vulture like prop, like a carcass or anything that looked like it. So we just weren't able to shoot it. And so I had to grapple with that. I actually had to sort of mourn that freaking vulture for a day or so before I could accept that we just weren't going to shoot it. It just wasn't going to be in the film. And then that allowed me to then move forward and be like, well, okay, then if that's not in there, what else are we going to do in its place? And now if you see it, you won't, I mean, especially if you've never read the script, I don't think you'd miss it. And I don't think it makes the story any less. It is different than what I envisioned. Sometimes things turn out better, even though they aren't what you imagined before, Changes can end up being like, and actually I've seen that, repeatedly through this whole process. And I think that's what helps me to also get through the gap. Cause it's like, and you see this in improv a lot too, that like, if you kind of accept the spontaneity of how things actually happen, thing far greater than you can imagine, and I've seen that a lot, and that helps me also.